Okay, what is going on, everyone? And welcome back to Mets Weekly as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest news and rumors all off season long in Mets land. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for weekly episodes of our show that are recorded regularly on Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live, as well as some multiple videos that we like to put out throughout the week, all off season long. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all that great stuff regarding the team. As the conversation keeps going, we will continue to star comments throughout the conversation to keep the flow of it going. Also, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for other content over there for as long as TikTok lasts. I don't even know. Apparently, these are the last days of it. But as well, for audio listeners, make sure to follow us on your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day of the recording of the Mets Weekly podcast. So without further ado, let's get into the latest news. And even though there has been quite the drama this past 72 hours in regards to the Mets and a homegrown talent who I'm sure we will get into the discussion later on about, but this one is specifically about the Mets going into enemy territory and bringing in someone from the Atlanta Braves and signing left-handed pitcher A.J. Minter to a 2-year, $22 million contract. I am joined by Frank. Frank, how's it going? Initial thoughts here. The Mets bullpen just got a little bit stronger, especially in the back end.
Yeah, we're back. 24 hours later, here we are again, same place, talking about the same team. The Mets are very active, and I feel like seeing what happened yesterday, seeing what happened today, Plan B is fully in place. They are now moving on to other stuff. They are getting things done. We talked about, they're talking to some players and, they're looking at some other things while they're waiting on Alonso to make his decision. Well, they're acting on stuff now. You saw Winker go off the board, now Minter off the board, and it matches what we saw. They said, okay, they got Winker, and part of Plan B was to get a high-end reliever. AJ Minter is one of the best left-handed relievers out there outside of Tanner Scott. So what we've read so far, it's been correct. So that definitely shows you that they are going about a different way. To me, there still needs to be one more part of Plan B, and that needs to be that actual replacement on the infield for Pete Alonso. Once that happens, we're ready to go with Plan B. If the Mets want to add on some other guys like we talked about in the margins in the bullpen, or more arms, or a Jose Iglesias type, or just some other veteran utility guy off the bench, and just other minor league stuff, they're ready to go. They have gotten done now a lot of what was on that to-do list, and we know bullpen help was a big one. From the left side, also a big deal. We'll get into Minter a little more in depth in a little bit, but overall, like, Plan B is fully in place. That's my main takeaway right away.
Yeah, obviously the Mets in these last 48 hours, they have now brought in two pieces. Both guys throw with their left hand. Winker's probably not going to be using his left hand that much. He's going to be using his wrist to hit the ball. That's how baseball works. But anyways, the Mets bring in Jesse Winker, which we saw them attach to other outfield options. I don't know if that is the entire thought of it, but when it comes to AJ Minter, they get the bullpen a little bit more sturdy. Because last year it was definitely a problem, especially with a decent amount of injuries between Brooks Raley, who most likely will be out of the equation, might not be healthy until like the middle of the season either way, and then Dinel Nunez, who hopefully, I don't know, 7th or 8th inning guy, kind of flipping back and forth with Minter, because Minter definitely got back end type of money here. So he's definitely going to be a key piece to this type of bullpen, and to get in a lefty who has been a really good lefty, determining by the matchups. I know that there are some things about Minter that have kind of dipped a little bit. I know that he did have a surgery like in 2023 or something like that, and his velo's kind of dipped since then. But he still has been able to put up decent numbers. Strikeouts haven't been fully down, still been able to throw strikes. It seems like the main issue last year for him, and it hasn't been a problem throughout his entire career, just in 2024, was the home run ball. Lots of command issues, missing spots, and definitely something that can be maybe tinkered with. I don't know if they can make some adjustments in that way. So for those of you who are seeing the graphic on the bottom, seeing a FIP almost at 4.5, that has to do only strictly with the home run ball, which again, the Mets kind of need guys who do throw strikes in this bullpen, especially with how we've seen them nibble around the strike zone for 162 games last year. Now, even though with, the lack of stuff or lack of command or whatever, the way that you're looking at this is you definitely have a reliever here in AJ Minter who can do a lot of different things well. It seems like he does do well in career-wise. I don't know if it was inflated last year. It seems like he does do fairly well against lefties and righties. Right-handed hitters actually, I believe, hit worse against him, which is probably the main reason as to why he used the bottom of the zone lot. But he did not face that many left-handed hitters last year. He did have a little bit of an injury-riddled season, obviously, like halfway through the year. I'll get into a little bit more of this, but I definitely think that, in coming to the protection of building around Edwin Diaz in this bullpen, this was definitely a really good start in the offseason. And one thing I will say with funny convenience, I was writing down some topics for our podcast on Monday. I see the notification that the Mets are attached to and hot on relievers right now. I think it was from Chris Costello. The Red Sox reporter saying, Tanner Scott they have talked to. AJ Minter is another, name to look out for. And obviously we talked about Tanner Scott last week. So I was like, okay, let's do a Minter segment. I type in Mets link to AJ Minter to put down on my topics in my notes. And then about 3 minutes later, the notification comes out that they have signed AJ Minter. So again, we can do a full-on rundown of that on Monday. But first thoughts, I would just say, you also have a little bit of closing experience here too. So if you're talking about a second closer, a secondary closer behind Diaz, this was definitely a good ad to go to. And, I'm happy with it. I like it. I think he was definitely on my list of relievers I would have taken. Probably means that Tanner Scott is out of the picture, but, we will see where else they go with this one. And I'm hoping that, maybe the plan B continues as, Alonso continues to slowly fade away from the Mets. And, again, it's for the best. Like we have said, they got to start plan B at some point because pitchers and catchers, it's getting closer and closer and closer. And they cannot wait this thing out. And waiting things out for Alonso, look at what has happened since they have stopped waiting things out. Signed Winker and they signed Minter. So it's going a lot quicker. And it's possible that we're live tomorrow for another signing. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it seems like. Now, like I said, now that they've kind of moved on from Alonso, so to speak, for the most part, they actually could finalize some things. And like I said, we'll see if there's, hopefully, like I said, one more move on the offensive starting caliber player with some power is really what I want to see. But for me, my biggest thing with Minter, too, is also the postseason experience that he has. He has a lot of postseason experience playing for the Braves, who always win the division or always in the postseason. So he's gotten a lot of opportunities, and he's been on the biggest stage. I mean, this is a guy that he's pitched in the World Series, he's pitched in the Championship Series, he's done it all. And overall in his career, he's got 25 innings pitched out of the bullpen as a reliever, 25 innings in the playoffs with a 2.88 career ERA. So this is someone who's been there and he's been successful. And like I talk about, when you're looking at this particular Mets team in 2025, the expectations of, we were in the NLCS last year. We had some bullpen struggles, no doubt about it. Very limited on the amount of guys we could trust. Really could use another left-hander or a left-hander in that bullpen. And AJ Minter checks all of those boxes. And I feel like for the kind of deal that they got him for, looking at around 11 million AAV, for someone of his caliber, that's really good. And to only doing a 2-year deal. I mean, we know that Tanner Scott, the main reason why the Mets probably didn't pull that off is he's looking for something much longer as far as years, closing opportunity. I mean, who knows? Minter could have got paid by somebody to be a closer. There may be teams that were scared of that hip injury and the velo dip and the uptick in the home runs and things like that. But, overall, the Mets, they didn't really have to do much of an overpay at all here. And if Minter goes back to being Minter still had a good season last year. I mean, that's the other thing too, is that, we could talk about, oh, well, his hip. And I mean, the FIP is one thing, but you still finished the RA, 2.6. I mean, that's pretty solid considering that you don't have
He had
the
a few
best
wounds
stuff.
in it, though. He had a few wounds. Yeah.
It wasn't great, but this is one of those very few guys who is consistent year in, year out, and that's hard to come by. So I feel like getting him for this deal, if he has a great season, he could opt out, and you'll see what happens there. But that's a good thing, honestly. I mean, because that means you got a great season out of him, and he helped your team out a lot. So, we'll see what happens when we get there. But, we've talked about it before, but we just go back in Mets history, like the Familia contract of 3 years and Betances of multi-years and things like that, compared to something like this. I mean, this is just phenomenal. All in all, we look at the value. So they continue to do that. And as far as like plan B, we talked about, how does 7.5 million to Winker, affect Alonso? Well, now when you say 7.5 million to Winker plus 11 million to AJ Minter, and then, like I said, hopefully one more offensive move, then all of a sudden you could equal Pete Alonso's AAV. So that's kind of where all of a sudden things are starting to piece together now and all make sense as part of being part of that plan B.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they have to shift somewhere, and they still have a lot of holes on this roster to fill in. I'm hoping that they do get another reliever. I don't know if it's going to be of this type of caliber where he's kind of like on that, tier 1B of free agents, because we all know that like the top tier was probably like, I don't know, it's like Scott, it was Trinan already signed back with the Dodgers. There are some other pieces there. Like if you're talking about like, the tier 1B here, AJ Minter falls in there, and AJ Minter definitely was banged up last year. Again, it just happens with relievers. They will continue to be finicky in that way. Seems like a little bit more of an outlier season. Pitched a lot less innings, so that's probably the main reason as to why the home run rate is up. But if you were to look at, from the rates of the years before, it seems like a lot of the long ball was suppressed by him. It seems like he's able to manage contact fairly well. And he does pretty much everything above average, even if you're talking about it from overall metrics. I mean, it seems like everything is, the 70th percentile and above. But if you're talking about it just from his overall arsenal, above average, 107 stuff plus, the location plus or command plus, or whatever you want to talk about it, was down from last year. But he was able to definitely tunnel pitches a lot better than actually he was before. And he was able to get some more chases, I'm pretty sure, than he usually does, which is pretty impressive, to be honest, considering, utilizing the breaking stuff, utilizing the secondary stuff the way that he did, with his velo going down a little bit. But maybe you do get a little bit more of a reclamation with the velo. It was down about a tick and a half, maybe, from his 2023 season. Seems like the cutter is a really big weapon for him against righties, which we've also talked about, that being somewhat of a good thing for Manaea, I think. Manaea with his cutter and his sinker, top of the zone. It's a little bit different though with Minter, because it seems like he just jams he just jams that thing into right-handed hitters, and it's not just really like cruising through the zone and trying to create some deception. But as for the deception, high arm angle, which is pretty it's a pretty tough look, let's just say, for whether you're talking about pull hitters, whether you're talking about hitters who have launch angle issues, probably the main reason as to why he contact manages so well. But hopefully you get a full healthy season from him. I'm kind of expecting. I don't know. Maybe there is some kind of other type of option in this contract that's not a player option because of the health. Like maybe it's kind of like you had with Jake Diekman, where he needed like 58 games to pitch in to get that vested option. Obviously, they DFA'd him before that could possibly happen. But you just never know considering his health, because $11 million to someone who missed a decent amount of the season last year. I mean, it sounds like a little bit bold, but maybe there is somewhat of a stipulation in there, but we haven't had really any reports. All we got was a 1+1, 11. It's most likely 11 million this year and 11 million for 2026 if he wants it. And if he does have a career year, maybe he does opt out and wants to get some kind of closer money somewhere else next year in a 32-year-old season. And like we have said, going into the late 20s to early 30s, that's the reliever prime right there. So this is the best case scenario to catch lightning in a bottle right here. And we poached him away from the Braves. It seems like from some Braves fans on Twitter that I'm seeing are kind of upset that we just signed AJ Minter. So I don't know if that's good or not. But I think that there is one more profiled reliever that I think that they do need to go after, and then we will see what is in store right after there. I think that the rotation's done. I think that maybe they do bring in another bat for one of the infield corners. Hopefully the goal is to get Brett Beatty out of the starting lineup, because right now he is. Because I don't think we can handle him batting ninth and then right on top of him, Jose Siri or even Tyrone Taylor, because those are just some uncompetitive bats, some uncompetitive ABs waiting to happen. But either way, AJ Minter, great signing. I like this a lot. But yeah, capping this off with Santander would feed families. You guys all know how we feel about Santander. Rosie coming in here saying hi. What's up, Rosie? I mean, this is definitely a good look here. I mean, I think that they definitely are forming something really well, because they had expanding the back end here. Let's just say that, and hopefully everybody stays healthy. Diaz, Minter, Nunez, maybe have Garrett in the middle relief, or maybe he's the second unit or whatever. But you definitely have a bullpen that's forming its depth, bringing in a guy like AJ Minter.
I mean, you mentioned a great name before in Jake Diekman last season. I mean, that's the guy who, for a while, was our only left-hander in the bullpen. And even though he had a couple of good moments, he had mostly disastrous moments. I mean, it was a not a good show to watch.
To where he was the worst player on the team. Like, that's how bad.
He was really, really bad. And that was our lefty. But now, you have Minter. So right there, you see a huge upgrade. And as we know, like, generally speaking, the left-handers that you face in the National League East, I mean, the guys on his team, somebody like a Matt Olson. Obviously, it's more so prevalent in the Phillies with your Harper and your Schwarber. So it's always nice to have a lefty in your bullpen. Just gives you another option. And listen, I hope that Nunez could kind of do what he did last year, at least most of it. I don't expect him to be quite as dominant. But, the other lefties that the Mets were using last year, you had Danny Young and Alex Young. And, Danny Young, for the most part, he was not really touching the mound in the postseason. I mean, eventually they gave him a shot once it was, like, totally over. But other than that, like they didn't have any lefties at their disposal when it mattered. So again, getting a guy with experience is huge. I would like to see them bring back Stanek somehow, some way on like a 1 year. That'd be great. If not, I get it, because he did pitch really well in the postseason. And then Reed Garrett, they still have to be careful with him, in my opinion. That's probably like another topic. Yeah. But they gotta be careful not overworking guys. So I feel like just having more players that you trust late in games is really big. I mean, we saw plenty of times where the Mets had a nice lead in the ninth inning, and then Carlos Mendoza is like, "Oh, we're up 6 runs. Let me just go to Ottavino." And then he goes to Ottavino, and the game becomes dicey. And now Diaz has to warm up, or Nunez has to warm up and come in. So stuff like that is what overworks guys. So if you could just have as many reliable relievers as you can, it helps all the other relievers in your bullpen because then they're more effective and they're more fresh. Now, if the Mets go to a six-man rotation this year, I mean, we've talked about just how many starting pitchers they've added. While maybe not the quality that we want, there is some quantity there if fully healthy. That is a big if when it comes to pitching. But you imagine that maybe one of those guys also ends up in the bullpen, and you have a true long reliever to kind of avoid some of these overworking situations and things like that. So overall, we know this is Stearns' specialty, so I do trust him when it comes to this. And, they've signed other guys along the way to minor league deals, and I'm sure all of them will be battling out spring training. So we'll see how it goes. But, I mean, this definitely it is a really nice get for the team.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at this projected bullpen from Fangraphs, I don't know if this is just the exact thing. They do have Tyler McGill, I think, in AAA. Yes, he's in AAA, still on the 40-man roster, obviously. And Danny Young seems to be the odd man out because they have Diaz, Minter, already updated, Budo, Garrett, Young, Reed Foley, and Canning. Obviously, you would bring in Dinel Nunez, but he's still considered injured at this current moment because I'm pretty sure he's still on. Oh, no, he's actually in AAA for Fangraphs. Yeah, Fangraphs, you're wrong. Okay. Dinel Nunez is going to be on this opening day roster if he is healthy. So, I mean, we'll see what they do look at in terms of like, I guess it's going to be a little bit more of a strikeout pitcher is what they look at for the other arm that they bring in that is a little bit more marquee. Because it seems like we do have a decent amount of contact managers, whether you're talking about Danny Young.
And also, don't forget that
Griffin
there is
Canning.
a possibility that Clay Holmes ends up in this bullpen. I mean, this is a guy that if the starting pitching experiment does not work out, I mean, he's more suited for the bullpen. And then you have a back end of Diaz, Holmes, Minter, and then those other guys. I mean, I definitely, like I said in a previous episode, but in the postseason, I could definitely see Clay Holmes being moved to the bullpen.
Yeah, it could definitely happen unless he just has like an insane like Seth Lugo type of reliever to starter thing. Then he's going to be in the playoff rotation.
Which again, that's a best case scenario. I mean, that would be
best case scenario. That would be awesome. Yeah. But again, when it comes to the overall bullpen, it seems like you do have some guys projected to be in the bullpen who also could make a start, and you also have Clay Holmes in the starting rotation who could possibly move to the bullpen. So again, it seems like the flexibility from Stearns is something that he's looking at from the overall, the quantity in here. But we'll see what happens. And I'm excited to see what else is in store for the rest of this offseason, because maybe right now with Pete kind of floating out of the minds of the Mets right now, it seems like they're starting to kick it into gear. Signing two guys already to major league contracts in the last 48 hours, which is good to see. And they're definitely playing it the right way. Whether it seems like it's going to be tough and the lineup's not going to be the best because Pete's not going to be here, they tried all they can. I mean, I don't know what to say, and we'll get into that in a second because there were some reports that came out after we went live yesterday talking about it to kind of clarify some of that stuff. Jazz coming in here saying need one more arm, Yates, Stanek. I would be happy with either. Stanek's a little bit healthier because Yates does have a little bit of those issues.
And there. Yates is quite a bit older too, so there's also that.
He is quite a bit older.
Even though he's good, so, I mean, it is a risk.
Yeah, he was great last year. He's going to get paid. He is definitely going to get paid, especially after seeing what AJ Minter just got. I mean, to be honest, after AJ Minter having this half of a season last year, kind of on a little bit of a downswing in trajectory, you got to think that maybe it's going towards maybe, I don't know, maybe 18 million a year for somebody like Tanner Scott right now.
It depends if someone gives him the closer money. I mean, at this point, he could. Our guy Mike Mayer, he had an interesting tweet. He put like over the last however many years, left-hand relievers to reach a 5 cumulative WAR. The list was Josh Hader, Tanner Scott, and AJ Minter. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, this is one of the best left-handers in baseball, is what it seems like. And again, that consistency is big for me. I mean, you could show me a bunch of guys that left-handers had a great year, but the consistency, the playoff experience, it's hard to do that. And he's obviously already pitched in the National League East specifically.
Yes.
So I mean, it really checks a lot of boxes of what you would want in a reliever.
I think that there, maybe the velo dip, maybe a little bit of the home run issues last year is something that could be a little bit concerning in some way if you're talking about high leverage guys from the back end of the bullpen. But I think it goes really easy with this question. And we've talked about this before. This has been a running joke here. You have guys like Bryce Harper. You have guys like Kyle Schwarber. You have Matt Olson in this division. You have some of the young guys from the Nationals who are seeming to blossom recently and showing that they have quite a bright future. From all the lefties, if you're talking about lefty specialists in this way, would you rather have Danny Young face those guys, or would you rather have AJ Minter? Would you rather have Sean Gilmartin face those guys, or would you rather have AJ Minter? I'm definitely going with AJ Minter in that way. And also you have him pitch well against right-handed hitters as well.
Oh my God. Yeah. And which we know is a key now. I mean, because, back in the Sean Gilmartin days, you didn't have the 3-batter minimum rule, but now that you do, and that's why Minter gives you this guy who could face the lefties if you need him to, like in the middle innings, but he's also good enough against right-handed hitters with that cutter that if you need him in the 8th inning or you need him to make a save, he could do that as well. So again, the value that you're getting for all the different things he could provide is really wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, the overall flux of things, I think this was almost a career high in ground ball rate last year, even though he had a home run issue last year. So, I mean, there still is some ways that he's managing contact. He just was not on his A game last year, but to still give you a sub-3 from the bullpen, I mean, it is still quite impressive that he was able to do that. And hopefully we have a little bit of an upswing there. And this so-called pitching lab, can help you in some way. Jazz talking about the loaded closer/reliever free agent class. There is a lot of great relievers on the free agent class next year, which I don't think has really been talked about as much. You have a Diaz opt-out, which I don't think he's going to take, but we'll see. In regards to the year that he does have, Ryan Helsley, Devin Williams will be available. Luke Weaver, who has blossomed with the Yankees. Ryan Presley's available, proven closer. Raciel Iglesias, Michael Kopech. I mean, there is a lot of talent out there. I'm sure that even David Robertson will be available because he always signs these 1-year deals now that he's going into he's like going to be 40. And Aaron saying, I'd be cool with D-Rob too. I'm still pissed that we did not get to see D-Rob and Diaz back end. Yeah, we didn't. We were not able to see, those two in the back end of the bullpen. And it really, I'll tell you, in 2023, that Diaz injury hurt us more than anyone possibly thought. And then obviously the repercussions of what happened in 2024, where it was tough for him to grab his footing. So hopefully, under that contract, we can see a little bit better, but you never know. Maybe it ends up that, the dominoes fall and Clay Holmes is in the bullpen and he's the closer. Who knows? We'll see. Because Seth Lugo, he should be the closer.
At one point he was. I mean, at one point he did take the job. But this is a big year for Diaz too. I mean, we're talking about the bullpen because he does have that opt-out this year. And, if he doesn't take it now, well, then he's kind of locked in with us for a few more years. And then the Mets have that club option in 2028. Mm-hmm. So this is a big year for Diaz too. I find it hard to believe that he's going to get a better deal than what he's got going into an age 33 season. So he probably stays here unless he has like another like
especially with
career
the
year.
wide selection of guys on the market next
Yeah,
year.
that
Like
kind
that's
of
the thing.
market,
I'm like,
a
I
guy's
don't see him
closer
opting out,
type.
but
Yeah, exactly. Because that would be, you don't see that many teams giving that many big deals to relievers. Like you have your Hells, you have
unless
your
he
David
amplifies
Williams.
a Aaron Loop year
Mm.
from the closer role, yeah, I don't really see him opting out in that way. I just
He needs a
yeah.
vintage Diaz year. I mean, he needs
Oh
a
yeah.
2022 Diaz, a 2018 Diaz. Like he needs one of those kind of seasons. Which, if that does happen,
If
like
that
the
does
Mets are going to
happen,
be a great team. So
not to
you're
mention
okay
if
either
that does
way.
happen, that would make me happier than anyone to
Yes.
exist as a Mets fan. We already know how much I love Edwin Diaz, so I would love to see that happen. Um, it made the depth of the bullpen trash. Yeah, I think he's talking about the injury to Edwin Diaz. Yeah, it got us to a point where we were signing Dominic Leone to major league contracts. We were giving major league high leverage innings to Steven Agosic. I mean, it got bad. It really did get bad quick when Diaz went down. And that's what happens when you give that big of a contract to a reliever. Evens things out, and it evens the budget to kind of form a really good bullpen in that sense. It's kind of like, I don't know if Andrew is still in here when the Rangers paid Igor. Anyway, Juan Pete Alonso asked for an opt-out. The Mets do not want to give him an opt-out, but the Mets give AJ an opt-out. Different thing. Kind of a different story. It's been Jeff Brigham. Oh, Jesus Christ. It's a different thing. It's a different market. I think a lot of Mets fans. I'm seeing a lot of them on Twitter, and I sense to just not really troll as much as I have been recently. I've kind of eased off and been having some solid conversations, and it seems like in regards to the Pete Alonso stuff. Well, Shamanaya got 25 million. Why isn't Pete Alonso getting 25 million a year? Like, it's different. Pitching is expensive. It's a different market. They look at it from positional. This is how these GMs look at it. It's only the top 1% of Soto, Judge, Shohei, Betts, like those guys. They're looked at as, okay, how much money do they get in total? Overall AAV, it all really has to do positional with their age, with how available they are. I mean, that there's many different
all
things
those
they
players
look at.
you mentioned too, none of them
Yeah.
play first base. Like first base is also a position that does not get paid highly, like the way starting pitching does, or like you mentioned those outfielders, middle infielders. That's where the big money comes from. And you had a really good post about it, but what the Mets offered Alonso was extremely fair considering first
Yep.
base markets with active first basemen of guys who are better than him in Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson. Like, they gave him such a fair offer, and he turned it down. Like, he put himself in this situation. I mean, it stinks for Pete, but he put himself in this situation. He had opportunities, and it just didn't work out.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, this is what I can't understand. It's like, I don't understand how you can say that Pete Alonso is getting lowballed in this situation. I don't understand it, because if Pete Alonso was worth more than what the Mets have offered him, and they've given him multiple offers that he has turned down, why haven't all of the other 29 other teams offered him more? I mean, seriously, we're talking about a market where the over inept LA Angels, who are constantly just throwing money anywhere, they have halted at giving him just 2 years, $50 million. That was a report that came out yesterday, excuse me. It really, again, this whole lowball thing, it's coming from an emotional feeling and attachment for Mets fans. And I mean, I understand it. It's okay to be sad. It's okay. But when it comes to baseball, it is a business, and business is not personal. You should not be doing this whole business. There's a reason why you don't go into business with your friends. That's why that's always a lesson that is always put out. I mean, the Mets right now, they are looking to do something that they have failed to do many, many times, and that being doing what is right for the team. and it's not about individual players. So again, I just if you have a little bit of a gripe right now with the Mets front office, I don't know what to tell you. He turned down 7 years, $158 million. He turned down 3 years, $90 million with no opt-outs. He turned down 3 years, $70 million with opt-outs. So those are that's a long-term contract, that's a high AV contract, that's a pillow contract. Those are 3 types of contracts that they have offered to him, and he turned them down. So I don't know what to say anymore. And, if people believe that he should get more or get more in total value, more of a long-term deal, he should have played better in 2024. Or he could have took 7 years, $158 million. He's not getting that money back because, one, he's a year older from when he actually was given that contract. And 2, he doesn't have a stupid GM there to give it to him. And I don't want to hear anything about Epler is willing to spend money and Stearns is penny pinching. You know why? Because Stearns has actually had sustained success. What has Billy Epler won? Chirp, 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 chirp. I don't even think he's ever won a playoff series as a GM.
Angels didn't get there with him at the helm, and there's other, and as you just talked about, there's other reasons for that. But Stearns has made a lot more happen with less resources, so to speak. Stearns did not have Mike Trout. Stearns did not have Shohei Ohtani. He's made things work. So it is just like we said. The more and more as time's going on, you realize the very big differences between the two of them. Stearns would not give $40 million to 40-year-old pitchers, 2 of them, have them both on the same team, and just really, not really hamstring you financially, but just have way too much committed to not the best of fits, or like the panic reactions. Like, oh, we lose DeGrom, we have to give max money to Verlander. That's not how he reacts. It's like, oh, we lost Alonso. Well, we're going to try to find creative ways to fill this in. We're not just going to say, oh, now let's give all our money to Alex Bregman. Or, oh, let's go. Like, there's not that panic reactions that you see.
No. And that's what I really like about him. He's very well thought out. Does it seem a little bit tiring at some times when it's like, oh, well, come on, let's speed this thing up here. But I think we all know where the process is. These things go behind closed doors. We didn't really hear much about AJ Minter until, like I said, 5 minutes before that it went out that the Mets were linked to AJ Minter, or maybe it was a possible option for them. So we know what the direction was for this past month or two, and it's been slow because of one guy saying no constantly, over and over and over. That homegrown guy that everyone says loves being a Met, said LFGM, he's a great polar bear, and he's cute. Guess what? He's rejected 3 different contracts from us. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm not saying that he didn't love being a Met. I am not saying yada, 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 but something's got to give. Something has to give if he wants to be with the New York Mets, and he has not given anything. The Mets don't owe Pete Alonso anything. They don't. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear it. Okay? And that has nothing to do with how I feel about him as a person. Again, I thank him for everything that he did here. He was a great Met. He is one of the best hitters this franchise has had. But when things are just not connecting and things are just not right, at one point, you got to keep going. Because in this certain circumstance, he is not going to get anything better. This market has showed that. Why would the Mets bid against themselves? It's dumb. Just because we need to bring our homegrown sweetheart back. Stupid. Just stupid, unnecessary. And whether it makes the lineup worse or not, which you added Juan Soto, so it can't be that bad, right? But again, I digress because we need to have an all-star at every single position. But it's just again, and this is a very reasonable reaction. It's okay to be sad. It is okay to be sad, but to be enraged at the Mets front office for not even trying when they tried. They did exactly what competent franchises do. And to be honest, I think for a first baseman going into their 30s who, doesn't provide any other tools but his power, like, again, $23 million a year that they've been offering him every single time in every single type of facet. This is very, that's very generous in my opinion, especially when you're talking about it compared to the market, because that would have been higher than Matt Olson. That would have been about, I don't know, 2.5 million below Freddie Freeman, maybe. He ain't Freddie Freeman. He's just not. Freddie Freeman has been the best first baseman of this generation. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Who knows if maybe Pete Alonso gets to the 500 home run club or whatever in his career, and he ends up being there. But we all know that Freddie Freeman is a better player than Pete Alonso. It's not about who's the better hitter. I don't even know how to explain this thing anymore. The Mets are doing the right thing. And to be honest, I think that they did a little bit more than they should have in regards to how Pete Alonso has presented himself in this free agent market, where it seems like nobody else wants him. Nobody else wants him. And at this current moment, to be honest, I will tell you right now, even though we're hearing the Blue Jays or whatever, now that the Mets have kind of stepped back to Pete Alonso, this could drag into spring training now. I'm going to tell you right now, and he's going to be sorry. Oh, well, I don't know what to tell you.
And that's the thing, is that Boris is willing to wait till spring training. I mean, it does not bother him at all because Boris is not the one that's actually playing the sport and has to get ramped up and, just get acclimated to the new team. I mean, it's all on the player. And then, they don't have as good a year and what have you. So it's just, I'm just very curious because like we said yesterday, but until Alonso pen to paper somewhere else, until Vlad pen to paper extension, there's still a lot of things that could happen here. Just all over the sport. So until it's actually a done deal, we'll see where they end up. I'm just very curious that the Mets also don't want the opt-outs either. I wonder if maybe as the offseason goes on and on and on, maybe the Mets would be more open to opt-outs because, they say they could look at it as like, oh, really, it's like a 1-year deal kind of. I feel like that's the only way the Mets would take him back
with, at this point. With Alonso?
Yeah.
Alonso. Yeah, well, Alonso, apparently Will Salmon corrected it last night. And he said that there were opt-outs in that deal, but he wanted... So basically the Mets offered, I guess, $390, but there was no opt-outs.
Right.
And Pete wanted $390, but with opt-outs. And they didn't connect on both. So it's a $20 million difference in that way. So the Mets offered $370 with opt-outs. And they also offered $390 without opt-outs. Pete wants both, basically, is what we're seeing. Now, I did not I did not see the entire, but for excerpts that I was seeing, it seemed like that was the gap that they had in between once Pete Alonso was willing to be getting a 3-year deal. Yeah, Sherman said 370. That was the one with opt-outs. 390 was their initial offer before Pete Alonso agreed to start doing 3-year deals, 3-year negotiations. I guess that was what they were looking at, because 3 years, 90 million, and then I guess Pete Alonso at that current moment wanted 7 years, 8 years. I mean, like maybe it was that was he looking at, and then they shortened it because maybe there was that one report, like we said, the Prince Fielder comps, and then the next day it was 6 years, and then it was 3 years. So I feel like that was kind of the gap that they were trying to fill in there, and the Mets kind of countered with that. So he wanted both at the same time, which they were not willing to do that, because if you give $30 million to a guy, he opts out of it, you're going to go through the fucking same thing next year? Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's either you take the less money in AAV and then you could opt out, have the pillow contract, because we're not giving $30 million to a 30-year-old first baseman who isn't Freddie Freeman or Matt Olson. So again, I agree with the Mets doing that. I agree with it. I'm sorry. I just, again, and we knew that this market was going to be a lot tougher than he thought it would be after the year that he just had. One wild card walk-off or one wild card game-winning home run, that doesn't solve you going almost a near, what is it, batting a near sub, 200 with runners in scoring position. I mean, listen, I agree too. I agree. He's Pookie. Again, I mean, Evan is correct here. But, you know, sometimes Pookie goes. All right? Pookie goes. Alonso may or may not come back, but Stearns is not scared to have flexibility early in the season. He welcomes it a bit. Exactly. And again, I've talked about this before with the rotation. I've talked about this before with the bullpen. It's not going to be a complete finished product. They're going to talk about it at the trade deadline of what they need to address. And maybe they are going to have to do, maybe they are going to have to do, a little bit more than we thought. Maybe this rotation overperforms. Maybe it doesn't. Never know. Yeah, that's the difference between a good GM and a bad GM. Chris Drury, I am in your walls. All right. Frank, if you want to.
No, I mean, I just, the reporting on the whole situation has been weird. It's like, oh, they offered him 90 million. Oh, they didn't offer him 90 million. Oh, they don't want to do opt-outs. Oh, they do want to do opt-outs. I'm like, who do we know who to actually believe now? I mean, because I feel like like you said, it changes so much within the same day that it's like, I don't even know who to believe anymore. I think I'll believe anything once I actually see what deal he does take. You know, I'm like, oh, well, maybe he was okay with no opt-outs, or oh, maybe he was okay with short term. Like, we'll see. I mean, because what I wonder is that if the Mets had, again, this exclusive 3-year deal, if the Mets are off the board completely, like they're like, no, we've moved on, we got Winker, we got Minter, and maybe we're working on something else, then does another team get that short-term offer? Like, I feel like the Angels would probably jump on that one, like the 3-year deal. Maybe they do something like that.
Maybe they do.
But if they don't offer that short-term deal to anybody else, then they might still find themselves just kind of stuck, and they played themselves into that. I mean, they put themselves in that situation because, like you said, there's been multiple opportunities to avoid that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's, Cam Liberty coming in here saying, agree generally, but when you're trying to compete, you wish we had Pete instead of quibbling over a few million a year. Again, it's a little bit more of just the positional value overall, because they offered him more AAV than Epler originally did 2 years ago, where it was a little bit more of $1 million, but again, stretching it out to where it's, 26 million, 27 million for Pete Alonso, only for him to just want to opt out if he does well. That there's no reason to, just give him this higher AAV for just 1 year. Because, again, if this was Freddie Freeman or Matt Olson, I don't know. It's a little bit more of the Mets did exactly what they needed to do, operating like a smart franchise. And if that includes letting one of their homegrown talents walk, they're going to have to do it. Again, I just think it's just going to continue to be this emotional attachment that Mets fans have, and you have every right to have it, but it's no way to run a baseball team. You just can't do it. And I think we have saw this firsthand as well. The Mets may have had the richest owner in baseball. We know it took a lot of guts to let Jacob deGrom go. We know it did. Whether it was on the trajectory of he didn't want to be here or this or that, we know that it took some guts for the Mets to let him go and pivot as quick as they did to Justin Verlander. Did it work out? No. On the other side with Jake, he has not pitched that much. But you never, I mean, again, I think, listen, you can think all about the polar bear kids and all their overpriced jerseys. Listen, I guess, Andrew, you should tell them where they can go for him to go sign them for him. That could be some really good advice, Andrew. You could be very nice to everyone and tell them the opportunity. I'm sure Andrew will have plenty of fun on Monday when we are live, and he's going to talk about more of the reality, probably regarding Pete Alonso. Will it anger a few? Maybe it will. But again, we've talked about this before. There's a sense of reality here. And the reality is that baseball is a business. Anybody can let anybody walk. If the Braves can allow Freddie Freeman to walk, who is twice, 3 times, maybe even 4 times, 5 times, 10 times the player that Pete Alonso is, the Mets can allow Pete Alonso to walk. And it all just has to be whether it makes sense or not. But you just never know. Speaking of the reliever market moving a little bit quicker, Jose Leclerc, another guy on the market, has signed with the A's on a 1-year deal. Very good pickup by the Sacramento, Kansas City, Philadelphia A's. Very good pickup there.
And that's
that was
actually
somebody that
on
we've
a
talked
1-year
about.
deal.
Yeah, 1-year deal.
That's
He had a rough year last year or something. He was banged up a lot. He was one of the main reasons as to why they weren't that good. The Rangers, why they had such a World Series hangover. But that's a good pickup. That's a good pickup, to be honest. If you're talking about the A's there, I can let my dad know. Big A's fan. Okay. Anyways, yeah, I know. I kind of wanted him to. But what can you say? It's Sleepy Stearns. Am I right? He's always asleep.
He did his signing for the day and took a nap.
Yep, exactly. He's meditating. He's meditating now. He's like Aaron Rodgers. He's so full of himself. Brad coming in here saying exactly. Freddie Freeman left the Braves. They won a championship with him. The Mets didn't win a championship with Alonso. The next year they pivot to trading for Matt Olson. Jesus. Yeah. Not offering Pete more than $3 million a year with arbitration paid is a smart move. Yes, it is, because it was already, again, on the first baseman market. If Pete Alonso were to take $23 million a year, that would have been, let's say, that would have made him the 3rd highest paid first baseman, maybe the 4th highest paid first baseman if you want to count Bryce Harper, but he signed that.
He signed as
he signed that to be a right fielder.
It was gonna get in.
Yeah, he signed that to be a right fielder, and he doesn't really have anything to do with the market. Again, if you don't want this debate between a few million or whatever, here's how I see it. Pete Alonso should have played better in 2024 then. If he wanted a better deal, he should have played better in 2024. Because when you get, because when you're talking about guys who are high on the market, high market guys like Juan Soto, or even if you're talking about Anthony Santander, coming off career years in their career year, in their contract year, teams are willing to overpay a little bit more because they're talking about upside. They're talking about the upswing. They're talking about your stock. Pete Alonso, ever since that 2022 season, which was one of his best, it's gone down since. The production has gone down. I'm not saying he's going to regress into complete hell towards the back end of his 30s, but let's not act like he's the same hitter that he was in 2019. You can't say it. You can't. I'm sorry. It's the reality of the situation. It's not to be mean to Alonso. Again, Alonso's been a great Met. He's been a great Met. And to be honest, if he finished his career with the Mets, then he probably would have his number up in the rafters. But one thing that I want up in the rafters is a World Series title. The only way to get there is to build a team, not accommodate to players. And when the player isn't cooperating, you got to move on. Sorry. And Chat Frank is saying that Leclerc got 10 million, which is not bad. That's not bad, to be honest.
Yeah, on a 1 year, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, not bad. Good one. All right. Yeah. Good signing. Good signing, A's.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, listen, like you said, they're trying to win the championship, but like we both have said, you're not going to do it with Brett Beatty in your starting lineup. So they still got to do something. I mean, what that something is, whether that's internal or external, we'll see. But something still needs to get done for this lineup.
I definitely want to push Beatty down the depth chart.
It's like the new McGill thing. It's like, how many guys can we get to the point where he's not in the equation anymore?
Yeah. And now we've pushed it already as far as it can go. How do we get Drew Smith down the totem pole? He's a free agent now. So maybe he's finally gone. Who knows? Speaking of
why is his market not moving at all? I mean,
I have no clue. I have no clue. He has such a great ERA as a Met. I don't get it. I don't get it. Not to mention he's very, very attractive. I mean, makes no sense to me. Arenado makes sense. Arenado makes a little bit more sense now with Pete Alonso out of the equation. I've opened to it a little bit more than maybe a few weeks ago, depending on the right-handed bat balance. But you never know. I don't know. It's rough because I'm not a big fan of giving Bregman that money. I'd rather have Arenado personally. I think Arenado fits a little bit better into the Citi Field waters than somebody like Alex Bregman. But you never know. I don't know.
I mean, with the temper Nolan has on him, it really could just go either way. I mean,
it could be rough
because the Mets are not getting the Arenado that was, the MVP candidate. They're getting a guy who's just barely above league average offensively.
Speaking of temper,
and this is now 2 years in a row.
There was something about Evan Longoria.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, he does not believe that this Mets clubhouse will get along, which is maybe just coming. I don't know if it's coming from experience that he has had with any of these players.
Well, he said it after the Winker deal. So, I mean, maybe he thinks between Winker and Siri and like those kind of guys.
Maybe. I don't know. Have they had like a history? I don't know. I know Siri and Soto have a history, right? They have a little bit of a history.
A little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think he's just talking about McNeil.
I mean, you do have Jeff in there. I mean, Jeff's the one guy who actually has been in a locker room fight. So, but I mean, then people are talking about, Winker was part of the OMG Mets and the Grimace and all this stuff. So,
yeah,
this team had one of the best clubhouse chemistries in all of baseball last year. So, I don't see why that would change.
All I know is that if you can find a way to have Winker and Siri be friends, it will be a very toxic stew for the other 29 teams. Let's just say that, because they will troll you. They will piss you off. I saw something about people where, there's a possibility where maybe the Mets get Peralta from Milwaukee with the connection to David Stearns. I saw somebody saying that, but also like a little bit of a stopgap at first base, trading for Rhys Hoskins. And I was just like, Hoskins, Siri, Winker, I mean, even Soto. I mean, if you add in Rhys Hoskins to this lineup, and I'm not saying this is the 100% thing that they need to do. This is officially, you had your amazing Mets, you had your miracle Mets, you had your OMG Mets. That would have officially be the fuck you Mets. Like, you literally can just call them the fuck you Mets. Yeah, I think everyone will hate the Mets, but they won't hate each other. Well, it seemed like it was quite a family in 2024, the way that they lifted each other up and rallied behind crazy shit throughout the entire year. The Grimace, the OMG, I mean, there was so many things. The rally rat costume, the what's his name? The
pimp.
rally pimp. I mean, just so much. So much craziness in that game. I don't know if they can, I don't think they can repeat that, and they're going to have to get a little bit more serious, but it was quite a fun ride. Let's just say that. It was quite the roller coaster. I don't know if Jose Siri will do anything in that. And to be honest, when it comes to Jose Siri, if it becomes a problem, he's making $2 million, you DFA him. You know, you never know. Because again, there was another guy, Jorge Lopez, who just signed with the Nationals, by the way. He was making $2 million. They cut his ass when he did something stupid. So, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it was a wild year for sure. But like you said, different
year.
expectations. So we'll see how they go about their business. And obviously, Iglesias was really big for the good chemistry. And there hasn't been much talk on his market either. So I hope that by the time it's all said and done, they can get something settled, because we talked about, we thought if he was going to come back to the Mets, it would be because some team offered him a really good deal, because as Castellanos said, oh, this guy should have been unanimous MVP or whatever. I mean, he had a phenomenal year. So the fact that he remains unsigned with not much of a market, if the Mets could bring him back, not only would it help them just with their depth, having a utility player, but all the other things that he provides.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how they look at it. I saw somebody in regards to the bullpen saying earlier, and I forgot to start it. Tim Hill was somebody that was brought up by Tim Healy. They're both Tim. Anyway, both of them, Tim Hill probably could be a good, decent second lefty that replaces Danny Young on the depth chart, because that would be nice. Big ground ball guy. I think they're going to probably go a little bit more of a strikeout righty is the other one. Who will that be?
Again,
I'm not sure.
Fits that.
Stanek does fit that. So you never know. And if they were to get Stanek and Tim Hill together, I'd be over the moon. Over the moon.
Someone mentioned Tommy Kahnle in the chat as a Mets target, and he makes a lot of sense. I mean, any former Yankee with them bringing in the assistant Yankees pitching coach, I mean, it does make a ton of sense.
We saw, what was it, Jonathan Loaiza could be...
yes, that was a no. I mean, obviously, I mean, that's a guy. You want to talk about strikeout, great stuff on the right side. Would love to get him, but...
On ball guy, yeah. Tommy Kahnle, yeah. He's had a lot of injury issues, I know.
But I mean, he was able to right the ship,
healthy
and
last
still,
year.
Yeah, he still was able to get through it. So he's been fine lately.
3 consecutive sub-3 earned run average seasons. I mean, that's never bad, right?
No. Good ERA. We like that.
A little bit of a walk problem last year. No,
and that's one thing with Minter too that I'm interested in, is that he did not have much of a walk problem this past season, but we know that just about every single Met did. So I do wonder how him with this pitching staff and
Hopefully.
lab and all that stuff, kind of how that goes.
One can only hope. Let's just say that. One can only hope. And that's really all really you can ask for, to be honest, when it comes to just when it comes to relievers, because of how finicky they are. I would consider maybe that second lefty that you're replacing Danny Young to be. Again, I wouldn't be mad at Danny Young being on the opening day roster if it meant they are willing to, grab a flyer on Brooks Raley's health, but I don't know what the timetable on it is. But I would go for Tim Hill. Tim Hill would be definitely somebody out there. There really is a good amount of relievers out there, and they're going to start falling. But we also have a good amount of relievers who a good amount of hitters out there that are still available, that it seems like nobody really wants them. I feel like Santander will probably go first before Alonso and Bregman, because it seems like those guys are just going into the forgotten abyss. Woo Smith. Yeah, all right. All right, Ibby. Dude just came in here to troll, man. Daniel coming in here saying, as long as ARP Ottavino is gone, I like it. Yep, definitely. Love the profile picture, by the way. But anyways, yeah, July, August. I don't know, for the stretch of the playoff run, Brooks Raley is somebody that I would love to have. But you know, who knows? Who knows what they're looking at? Because you do have a little bit of an idea of the department that Stearns would go into, but there's definitely a wide selection of these relievers that they can possibly bring in. But AJ Minter is definitely a good start. We'll see what else they have in store. Lucas Sims is another one that I do want to do a segment on, so hopefully there's no timing problems. The other Lucas Urseg, fortunately, will not be available because he has tons of years of control. He was traded to the Royals, and it seems like the Royals are looking to beat. But we'll see what happens. I'm interested.
Yeah,
Definitely
listen,
interested.
they found Nunez out of nowhere, so I hope Nunez could kind of build off of that and be healthy, and hopefully Stearns can find some more. That's what he does. It's guys you haven't really heard of.
Yeah, Nunez. I don't know if Nunez was a. I'm pretty sure Nunez was a Sandy signing. Actually, he was originally.
I know he was with the Giants.
He was with the Giants. Or maybe he was a Rule 5 pickup by the Giants or something, and then they returned him back to us or something.
Yeah.
Like back in 2019, 20, like that, something like that. But I mean, he was incredible for us. He came out of nowhere. I'm hoping he can regain that form after these multiple injuries that he had. To be honest, for that little short stretch there, he was one of the best relievers in all of baseball.
Yeah, he really was.
Nunez was a draft pick, but Rule 5 Giants, and they got Tommy John surgery. Yeah, he had an injury. I think it was in 2023 too, which kind of shortened up his season, or 2021, he had an injury, which was, I think, Tommy John. Then he had another injury later on in the season, came back, spring training. He wasn't, I think spring training, he pitched for us in 2024, and everyone's like, oh, who is this bum? I always knew that he had good stuff, but I didn't know if he was going to be able to be in that like high leverage type of role. And he just came in, ran away with it, and was probably our best reliever if you're talking about sample size, because he did give us 35 innings before getting hurt. And we definitely missed him in that playoff run. Desperately missed him.
Yeah, big time. And you had the Diaz suspension and everything like that, so you needed other guys to step up, and there were just times where Diaz could not do it every night. You need other guys to come through, and Budo was part of that as well. But we'll see kind of where he ends up too. Maybe he's in the rotation, he's in the bullpen. I feel like you have a better idea by the time spring training is done. You see how does Griffin Canning do, how do some of these other guys do, and then they'll kind of the rotation filled out that way, and maybe some leftover pieces in the pen.
Yeah, Daniel Nunez he was never a big prospect. He was a international signing back in like 2017, got hurt in like 2020 during the pandemic, and in 2021 had Tommy John surgery, and the Giants ended up bringing him back, and he's been a reliever ever since, and even in his minor league career, he's been pretty solid. Let's just say that. You never know. You never know what they're going to do. I don't know why Fangraphs has him in AAA, because he's going to be in the opening day bullpen. I don't care if he has options left. Like, don't care. He belongs on this team, no matter what. If you can keep Adam Ottavino in the majors for as long as you did, you can keep Daniel Nunez in the majors after the good year that he just had, and I hope that's what they continue. And I hope that he's healthy too, because he was a huge part to this team staying afloat before he got injured. He'll be 29 next year. So hopefully we can see Daniel Nunez back, because he was phenomenal. But as for the rest of the bullpen, we'll see how they fill this thing out. Speaking of bullpen, speaking of former Mets, another signing dropped about a former Met. Shintaro Fujinami signed with the Seattle Mariners. Fujinami never pitched for us in the major leagues, struggled mightily, got hurt a lot. It's been a rough go since he came over from Japan. Had a really bad year with Oakland, split across with Baltimore, and wasn't able to figure it out here. So best of luck to him. We know he's going to a really good pitching development in Seattle, so maybe they can harvest something there. But another Met off the board, but I guess he wasn't considered a major league free agent. But either way, Mets bullpen continues to get stronger. AJ Minter, 2 years, $22 million contract. And it deepens the bullpen, helps out the back end. There is a opt-out after the first year. It's a 1+1 deal. Frank, I'll go to you on final thoughts, and I think we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we said the bullpen needs to be upgraded, need a left-hander, and they obviously did both those things here. Like we said, there's still more work to be done. I mean, obviously, Plan B, like I said earlier, is fully in place, so we'll see what else is part of that, and kind of where everything else ends up. Because, like you said, there's still plenty of relievers available. There's still a few big hitters available. So, and like I keep saying, we're getting closer and closer to spring training. So there's still some other things that need to be sorted out, not only for the Mets but also their competition around the sport. So I'm fascinated to see how everything finishes up.
We'll see. Still got quite a few weeks left, but we are very, very close to pitchers and catchers reporting, close to spring training. And it's definitely been a droning off season. It's been slow. It's definitely been slow. It's picked up quick, and then it's gone slow again. And there's still a lot of free agents out there, too. So we'll see what happens. Maybe it goes quicker. Maybe it doesn't. But we're all here for the ride. As for you guys in the chat, 79% of you do like this move of AJ Minter. 7% of you do not like it. 15% of you are 50-50. Now, let's wrap this one up. Guys, thank you guys so much for watching. If you were here for most of the stream, or you were here for all of it, we're here for a little bit, popped in for a little bit. Thank you guys so much. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you had not already. Turn on post notifications to know when we go live. Regularly, we are live on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the Mets Weekly podcast. They are available on audio the next day at 9 a.m. Thank you guys so much. For those of you in the chat, we'll shout out a few of you now. Caution, High Waves, our big donor. He's very, very rich. Aaron, of course, our guy Ibby. Daniel Caps. Jazz as well. Evan from Rangers Central, one of our good friends. Truro as well has been a really good viewer recently. Game for War, Daniel Casano, hopefully I said that correctly. Brad as well was in here. Cam Liberty, Rosie K. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Follow us on TikTok for as long as it exists. Follow us on X as well for all updates over there. Follow all of us individually, including our third co-host, who I think is in the chat right now, Andrew. He'll most likely be back for the Monday episode for our usual podcast. And finally, let's go Mets. One more time, AJ Minter, 2 years, $22 million contract, player option for 2026 at a $11 million AAV. Guys, that's the end, and we will see you guys next time, whenever they sign somebody, or for our podcast on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.